Hello. Well, I'm out today on a really dreary, dull, overcast day. It's December, it's the UK. It's pretty typical of the sort of weather we get in the winter. And normally I wouldn't come out and take photographs. In fact, most of my photography life, I never really took the camera out unless I was abroad somewhere sunny. But I think, like as the saying goes about there's no such thing as bad weather, there's only bad clothing. I think there's probably the same goes for photography. And I certainly think we should give it a try and see if we can get some decent photographs. And I've come to Holme Fen. It's a beautiful woodland. I've been here before, and they tell me that dull overcast conditions is good for woodland photography, so let's give it a go. Welcome to my series of videos about my journey into photography. I'm going to be telling you about all the ups and downs and the hurdles and the difficulties, things that I've learnt, and how I've overcome problems, both to do with the techniques and the gear involved with photography, but also about the whole creative process. So I want to explain just where I am as a photographer at the moment. I've only really been serious about this in the last sort of year or so. I've been taking photographs all my life, like most of us, and we all take photographs. But it's a big difference between taking photographs of your family and your holidays and things like that. And I've done that like everybody else, but I've always sort of done what my kids used to call my arty-farty photographs. You know, when I was showing the holiday snaps, you know, they'd say, oh, look, there's some of Dad's arty-farty photographs. And I suppose that's because I actually found it quite boring taking just pictures of people standing in front of ancient monuments and things. And so, like anybody who's got an interest in photography, I went out and took, you know, just photographs for their own sake. But it's actually quite hard to do that when you're in a kind of tourist, family kind of situation, because, you know, people are sort of keen to get to the restaurant or back to the hotel. They don't want to wait for you to set up your photograph. So it's always been sort of opportunistic and quite sort of casual, really. And I think that's the difference between a casual photographer and a committed one, is that a committed photographer will actually go out specifically to take photographs. And I think the reason for that has come about because I'm in the UK, it's 2020, it's lockdown, it's December, the weather is dull and dreary, as it always is at this time of the year. It's lots of cloud, Tupperware skies. It's not like being, you know, in Spain or somewhere exciting where the sun's always out and the colours are bright and vibrant. It's a very different type of photography. And that's good for me because I've always had this thing where I felt that the UK, I used to put the camera away and only take it out when I was travelling somewhere interesting, and I just sort of ignored the UK because I always thought that I always took bad photographs in the UK, and I probably did, but I think that it's more difficult to take photographs when the light is generally not that great. So when I say not that great, there's no such thing as bad light for photography. It's just you've got to find what type of photography suits that type of light. As you know, I went out to Home Fen, which is not far from me, the other day to take photographs, and I want to tell you a bit about that session and what I learnt. I think the first thing that I would say is that it's fantastic that I actually got out and went and took photographs on a cold, dull day, because the more you can take photographs, the better a photographer you're going to be, and you need to just get out and do it. But the thing that kind of struck me when I got out there and I started taking photographs, or particularly when I got back home and started processing them, was the incredible sort of tonal quality that you get, and when there is no sort of direct sunlight, and it's difficult to describe, but you can kind of see it in the pictures. There's a beautiful sort of it's kind of a crispness. It's something that the camera sees that perhaps we don't see, because we are probably used to thinking of it as, oh, it's a dull, dreary day, and our spirits are a bit down, and maybe we're not really seeing the world for what it actually is. And it's always an amazing place. There's always some fantastic photograph to be taken. It's just our psychology perhaps gets in the way of it. So I think one of the things I would say to you as well is that when you're taking photographs and you're reviewing your photographs on the live screen on the back of the camera, don't be too disappointed, because they often don't look that great, and even through a viewfinder it doesn't always look that special, particularly on a crop sensor camera, which doesn't have a very big viewfinder, and it's not particularly bright. But don't worry about it, because if you're taking a photograph of a scene, there's something about that scene that you've decided is beautiful, and it is. You need to try to identify what it is about that scene that you find interesting enough to take a photograph of, and don't worry too much about the results you get after having taken the photograph, because when you get it back home and you get it and you start to process it on your Lightroom or whatever processing software you use, and I really recommend that you do, then you'll start to be able to see what it was about the scene that attracted you to it in the first place. So don't let it put you off, because it used to put me off all the time. I used to take a photograph in the UK in dull conditions and have a quick look at it and go, oh, this isn't very good. The lighting is no good, and I always say, oh, the place is nothing special, or I'm a lousy photographer, or any kind of excuse. And I just wouldn't take photographs. I'd wait until I was, in somewhere where it was a bit more obvious that I was going to get a good photograph. So I think that's an important step forward, and I think getting out, taking photographs, dull and dreary weather, is a big step up for me, and it's something that you might like to try. Dull, dreary weather also means that you're going to be likely to be using slow shutter speeds, because you need to get more light into your camera. And that, of course, is a challenge in itself, and also an opportunity to be able to do some interesting shots, providing, of course, that you have a tripod. A tripod for me was something that I resisted for a long, long time. It's another accessory, it's more money spent on your hobby, and it's also something to lug around. So I've resisted it for a long, long time. But I can tell you, once you've got one, there's a whole new sort of world of photography opens up for you, because you can start to use those slow shutter speeds. So when I went out on that shoot, I knew that I was going to use a tripod, and it meant that I could also set my ISO levels down to the minimum, which means that I could get a better quality photograph. So, you know, that's good, because, you know, once you made that decision to use a tripod, then everything else kind of falls into place. Like you can then set your aperture at the best setting it is for the particular lens that you're using. Then your shutter speed is the last thing you need to worry about, because you can have it any shutter speed you like because you're on a tripod. And you can obviously also get some interesting effects, like on the picture of the lake that I took. I did a very long exposure using an ND filter to make it even duller. I use a 10-stop ND filter, which brings down my exposure level down by 10 stops, and means that I need a very long shutter speed. I think it was about 68 seconds. And that kind of just smooths all the movement of the water and all the movement, and you actually get a little bit of movement in the trees as well, which although there was hardly any wind, it still just makes them a little bit fuzzy. Not that that was the effect that I was looking for. I was looking for the effect on the lake, but anyway, that's by the by. Something that I was able to do with this photograph was to do a very deep crop, and I'm quite pleased with this photograph. I think it looks really nice. And I'm able to do that crop because it was on a tripod, and because I'm using a very low ISO. There isn't very much noise in the photograph. Now, I'm not saying that this is the way to do a photograph like this. I mean, it will be better to go back to the location and get the right lens and get the right composition and do it again properly and have a higher resolution. But it's certainly an interesting exercise, and it's come up with quite a nice image. I mean, the sort of takeaways that I got from this shoot was that it reminded me that I still I'm very inexperienced in using a tripod. I still find it very difficult in the sense that it's the obvious problem that your camera is not right by your eye, so you're having to deal with this thing that's on this static object. So you've got to use the live view preview on your camera, which in itself needs to be learnt how to be used, because it's the settings change when you're using the live view. The camera technique is different, and I came across some problems with focusing and things like that out in the field, which led to some frustration and time wasting whilst I figured it out. So it's really important, I think, also to realise that you need to rehearse these things back home if you possibly can, and really learn your equipment, because you don't want to be doing it out in the field. You want to be doing it back at home where you've got plenty of time and you can make a cup of tea and just be comfortable. Get out in dull, dreary weather, because it's a new challenge for you. That's number one. And it will improve your photography. Number two, learn your equipment, learn about your tripod, learn about live view, and particularly about focusing. 3, exploit your slow shutter speeds. 4, don't worry about what it looks like on your screen. And 5, get back and process it on Lightroom or something like that, and you'll end up with some really great photographs. And if you don't worry about it, because by doing all of this, you will learn what to do next time. And there's always a next time, and you can always do better. And I know I can, and that's the whole point of doing it. So look, I'm really grateful for you guys to be watching this video. It will really help me if you can subscribe by pressing this button that hopefully I'll be able to put in there, and give me a like as well. That will help. It just helps me kind of motivate me to do these things. It's a crazy pleasure that I get, and yeah, that'd be great if you could do that. And hopefully I'll see you next time. Thanks very much for watching.